am I on a very cloudy and overcast day? I'm actually coming to you on YouTube. Hi, how you doing? With this video, because today is actually the 5th anniversary since I successfully defended my doctoral thesis before a panel of professors, external professors and internal to my university. And what a challenge it has been. And I decided to just come to you and to share just some of my experiences and what the process was like for me. And I know this will no doubt encourage, motivate and inspire others, especially those who are doing a master's degree or you're doing your PhD or doctoral thesis. So I want to thank you as I just take some time to be thankful at this time as well. I'm grateful to God for His grace and His mercies and His favor towards me and to have brought me this very long way. It was a challenging experience. I'd gone through about 12 to 13 years of non-stop study, and I've done all 3 degrees back to back with a full-time job and everything else that I was doing at the time. So it was really a challenging experience, but I'm so grateful and I'm thankful for the support of my professors. I'm thankful for my colleagues in my doctoral program. I'm thankful for Rona, my wife, and her support as well, and for the more support of friends and family. Thank God as well for taking me, most importantly, through this time. So once again, I want you to come with me on the journey as I reflect on this very crucial time. I could say peradventure the most challenging thing I've ever done in my life, which was to have undertaken on a part-time basis a doctoral program. Thank you very much, and I look forward to you sticking with me as I walk you through the journey that I went through exactly 5 years ago, March 16, 2018, the day when I sat before that panel of experts in my field of study in education to defend my doctoral thesis. Thank you very much, and I see you soon. I'm so delighted to share these moments with you. I hope you're well. I came to you just the other day because it was such a special time in my life. It was the 5th anniversary of my viva voce, or my live voice, or the the oral defense of my doctoral thesis, which I did on the 16th of March 2018. And what a joy as I look back with gratitude, I look back with sincere thanksgiving that the Lord has been so good to me to have brought me through all these years of study. And as I've said before, that it was a challenging journey because I did all my studies back to back. We're talking about a bachelor's degree, 3 years with a full-time job, first class honors by the grace of God, and moving on straight into a master's degree in leadership and management with distinction, and then from there straight into the doctorate in education, another 6 years, including the time for the oral defense and the redrafting and the corrections which I had to do, which I'll talk about. So what I want to do in this session is really to encourage especially our master's, PhD and the doctoral students and candidates, because I know it's a lonely road. It's a great feeling of isolation at times, and I know I haven't posted anything for the academic side of things and playlist, but I just want to, don't worry, I'm gonna come to you with a whole lot because I have a lot to share here of my experiences, and I'm gonna make a few videos to share with you my journey, and hopefully aspects of it will be encouraging to you. So what I want to do for today is to break this session down into maybe 3 parts. I see how it goes if I do it in one video or just cut it up into 3 parts. But part 1, I want to just talk about the actual journey of my viva and how I prepared for my the oral defense of my thesis. I'll have a little talk about that. and then of course I will just talk you through how I organize myself and structure myself through the minefield of knowing your thesis and what is actually in your thesis, whether it's 65,000 words or 90,000 words, as the case may be. And then from there, I want to just move on to look at some of the sources I've used in helping me through, leading to writing the actual thesis. Succeeding in the viva or the oral defense, and then the joy of doing your corrections and having them accepted and passed, and then of course to put it all together and to go to the printers and to have your official thesis and your essays and your assignments all in one place and beautifully presented, and that's a real joy. Of course, after that, is the graduation, and here, the invitation, your doctoral PhD certificate and all that's there, and the graduation, the celebration. Before the celebration, of course, we have the time of the graduation when you get your friends and your family to come and share the moment with you. And for me, thankfully, all three of my graduations have been at the world famous Canterbury Cathedral, and what a joy to be there. One thing I actually do after the graduation, a bit later of course, is to have a time of celebration. And this is something I feel very passionately about, that when you have achieved something, you are to take some time to celebrate. All right, and of course you'll be mindful of others who may have not succeeded, and you'll be sensitive. But at the same time, you need to take some time to give thanks and to celebrate. You have done something remarkable, and you need to be thankful. You need to take some time to gather your close friends and family and to reflect on the journey, and that's exactly what I did in 2019. I took some time at work, at break and lunchtime, to put together a little book of celebration where I chronicled the journey leading in my academic process, and acknowledgements and my plans for the future, tributes from my professors. I talked about my thesis and what it was all about in this booklet, and certainly I have photographs that actually highlight the academic journey from the bachelor's straight through to the master's and through to the doctoral, the graduation. And look at the journey, look at the times here, burning the midnight oil and really laboring through delayed and deferred gratification. And as I normally say, that some people see the glory, but they don't know the story. They see the success, but they don't see the sacrifice. They see the recital, but they don't hear the rehearsal. And I tell you this, it's very difficult, it's very challenging, but I want to encourage you that you keep something ahead of you as you work and as you toil towards your goals, that you keep something ahead of you that will encourage you. All the wonderful pictures here of my graduation, and what a day it was, as we give thanks for the tremendous journey and the path along which I have come. It certainly has been a tremendous blessing. So all in all, this is one of the things that I planned after my graduation, and for the celebration, I actually had these printed and had a copy for each family that came to the celebration. In addition to that, I also did a little mug. And this, of course, was given to each family again who came to celebrate with me at the celebration for my doctoral degree. So all in all, that is just what I want to talk to you about for today. And what a joy, I said before, what a joy. It's my great pleasure to share these moments with you. Now, first of all, when you have completed your thesis, let's just put that out of the way a bit. You have written your thesis, you're going to go through many drafts. You're going to go through drafts after drafts after drafts, and your supervisors will be there. You may have 2 or 3 supervisors to guide you through the process. For me, I did a life history research illuminating the place of personal values and Christian beliefs in teaching sensitive and controversial issues in personal social health education, PSHE, in Southeast England, a life history approach. And this was a very challenging narrative doctoral thesis to do. Many people tend more to go for the quantitative research rather than qualitative narrative essays. Very difficult to defend, and you have really got to know your stuff to embark on a study like this. So in my case, I had one of my supervisors was in charge of the methodology of life history approach, and the other one was more the content or the subject matter. So that is it. You need the support. Once you have had your first review, just to make sure that you're writing at level 8, and then you are given corrections of a particular chapter that you have been given to do, then you continue writing, doing your research, depending on the type of research, qualitative, quantitative, what your paradigm or epistemology you're doing. And of course, as you keep writing and writing, submitting drafts, getting your corrections, and just working patiently through. Take your time and go through. It's going to be a hard and long process. You'll feel isolated. That's normal. All right, you need to take your regular breaks as well as you continue to work. Don't be discouraged. You can do it. You stick with it. All right. But as you go through, the time will come and you'll be called in for your final review. And that's when you have submitted all chapters. And when you put your thesis together, and for the first time you lay it out and you see all the chapters come together, from your introduction to your conclusion, bibliography, and your appendix, everything come together. It's a great feeling to see it all in one place. And when you submit that draft copy to your panel for your final review, that is to say that you're on the right track and your university has a confidence in you to say that they are happy to put you forward for your viva, or for the oral defense of your thesis. Now, it's a tremendous experience, as I said before, and I really want you to see it as such. It is something to look forward to, because at the end of the day, you're showing your supervisors, your professors, that you have done the work, you're confident in the work you have done, and above all, you are making an original contribution to knowledge. You have found a gap in the knowledge base, and you're plugging that gap. And one of the things you have to be 100% sure of is what is your contribution to knowledge. All right, for you to get a doctoral or PhD degree, you must be able to prove that you are making a contribution to knowledge. So overall, for me, the process, I just talk you quickly through how I organize myself. So I'm very analytical. I'm very structured. So I had this little book which I use, and you can see here the different sections that I've identified as I try to anticipate some of the questions that I would be asked. I did find a couple of textbooks very helpful and useful in the process. But for me, looking at the contents, the why I choose the topic that I did, what's the rationale, or my reason for doing that, how do I justify the gap in the knowledge, what's my original contribution to knowledge, how do I justify and show objectivity as an insider, outsider researcher. Because of course, as mentioned before, I did a life history narrative research where I had my own sample of about 15 teachers from the southeast of England. And it was very, very challenging, of course, to find the participants. Very challenging it because I was looking at Christian PSHE teachers and how they dealt with the conflict of their Christian beliefs impinging on their professional practice and how they dealt with that, the complexity of that conflict in the matter of conscience. And that's what I wanted to look at. I also had to look at the hypothesis, the claims, my research questions, and of course the process, what led me to choosing the topic. How do I justify the life history method, which is different from the case study, and to critique the alternatives. How do I develop the theory and to test? How do I design the research? How do I look at the variables and justify them? How do I justify my small sample of say 15 teachers? You have to do a lot of reading around methodology, etc., etc. Of course, we look at the data analysis and to justify that, what strategy I use, the factual and the conceptual conclusion, how do I justify that, how do I explain all of those, and of course, a whole matter of policy, practice, stakeholders relevant to my particular area of study. The wider context, how can you extrapolate from what you're doing, and can you really, and how do you justify that if you claim to be able to do that? What about the transferability of your findings to corporate cultures, the thesis concepts and relationships? What are the possibilities for further research? And of course, with the literature review or the review of the studies that have been done so far, what's my conceptual framework and how do I justify my choice of conceptual framework? How do I summarize and critique not just my own thesis but also the materials which are out there? How do I justify my significance, the significance of my study? What are the key issues of my research? What are my future plans and goals for my study? How do I relate to the boundaries? What are the boundaries of my research? What are the limitations of the research? And also, when you're at your viva, you have to also look at your examiners. What have they published? And are there any of their publications that are relevant to what you are doing and what you have done? You need to do your research and to ensure that there is inclusion of their material as best as possible. That would be useful as well. I had to consider what are my key findings, key recommendations, and also how do I, importantly, demonstrate doctorateness, if you will. Okay? What are the actual qualities, the characteristics and the criteria for doctorateness? And what is it that separates a doctorate or a PhD from master's level work? And you have to be able to demonstrate that your work is at that level, at level 8. All right? So, of course, the whole matter of reflexivity is, again, important as I write myself into the research as an insider, outsider. And that means as an insider, I'm writing the research, I'm bringing myself into it in a subjective way, and yet I'm standing back as a researcher to actually carry out the research with my participants. And I have to be able to show that balance, but also to be able to demonstrate both sides. And here literature comes in. You have to do your reading and see what the literature has to say about that as well. I mentioned the knowledge gap, the design, the field work, etc. How do you plug the knowledge gap? And for that, you really have to work. You can use the e-book, e-library, e-journals, but you've got to work. You have to put the work in. You have to put the work in. You're going to end up with probably a bibliography of maybe about 10, 17 pages. That's probably close to over 250 sources that you, at this level, that you consult, relatively speaking, to show that you have read widely on the subject and you're making a claim that your work plugs a knowledge gap and you're making an original contribution to knowledge, and you have to be able to justify that and to prove that. Okay, so your method, your analysis, your conclusion. And we talk about having that silver thread, that golden thread that runs through your whole essay, from the choice of topics and the words you use in your topic, to the aims, to the research questions, whether it's to illuminate, to explore, to analyze. Whatever word you use must be able to tie in with your epistemology, must be able to tie in with your ontology, and must run through the literature review, run through your methods, run through your data analysis, run through your conclusion. There must be that sense of coherence in your work. So overall, your research paradigm for topic and approach you have chosen, and why are you choosing this research? Why are you doing it? What are the new publications? How will you defend your thesis, etc.? So it's an awful lot there to take in, and as I said before, this is how I organize myself in preparing for my viva. So I take each one of those headings I was saying before, and I really research. And I went into, I use the labels here to guide me, so that as I speak to my professors, my external examiner, my internal examiner, my professor, and the panel chair, all those were there at the defense, just to make sure that I know the material, I know the stuff. Because that's one of the things that the examiners did point out for me, that I was able to pinpoint specific pages in my thesis, and that I was well rehearsed and well prepared for the defense of my thesis, because I really put the work in. And that's something you have to do. Put the work in and make sure that you find a strategy and a way that works for you. For me, taking each topic, anticipating questions, looking at YouTube videos like this one, for example, of people who have been to the Viva before and seen what they have to say, reading up, going to the library, looking at research, looking at thesis online or in the library itself, and really ensure that you are prepared. But for me, this really helped, and that was just amazing. The other thing I did, which was really useful to me, which may seem a bit bulky here, if you permit me a while, and I did take all these into my viva, because when my external examiner looked at me and said, after nearly 3.5 hours of grilling, my viva was a long one. It was a long one. At one point, the examiners were pretty much arguing between themselves, and I just sat there quietly and let them carry on. But overall, it was just under 4 hours, start to finish, including a 20-minute break or 15-minute break, which they insist I take. I didn't really want to take a break, but they insist I take a break. But, I mean, this is part of the preparation as well. As you can see here, it's a lot of work I've put in here to look at the research question, the doctoral journey methodology, characteristics of a good thesis, preparing the viva voce, or the live voice. I looked at that one, and of course it's just such a process. Look at this one. So let's put that one there. This one, why is your study worth doing? Research questions, the research proposal, and lining that out. And also on this page, I also looked at my timetable and say how I want to structure myself over the next 6 months at the time to complete my work and to make sure that I complete everything on time and ahead of time, which I did complete and had my thesis bound about a week or two in advance. It's always good practice to work ahead of yourself. I also worked on the ethical issues, the research questions, and these are to be drafted and redrafted many times. So on this sheet, for example, I was just looking at matters to do with ethics and methodology, reading extensively, and I mean it's just an awful lot of work, as you can see, highlighting and just preparing so much there. On this one, to help guide me for my research and my defense, I looked at the research design, the overall design of the research, the sampling, how to contact the participants, the selection for the sample, how to collect the data, process, analyzing my data, and developing my theory or hypothesis, and of course exercising caution in my truth claims and being, considerate and being mindful of the fact that there are limitations to my study and to my claim. So in this sheet, I was working on my research design, and you can see quite a lot of work there to prepare that one for the design. In this one, I was looking at the methodology, and of course, again, this was challenging because when I met with my second supervisor, and she said, when I discussed with her what I wanted to do, and I was thinking of maybe a case study or something of the sort, and she mentioned the life history approach. Now, I've never heard of a life history in my life, in all fairness, and to really embark on a doctoral thesis, to take on a methodology I've never heard of before, and to have to research it, to do it, and above all to justify it and to defend it in front of the panel of experts. And you're talking about the examiners I had, especially the external examiner. I'm told later on by my panel chair that he was the top examiner and researcher in the field. And I thank God for the confidence they had in me to get that examiner. But I tell you, if I'd known that before, I'd probably, I don't know how I would have dealt with that. But the methodology, the methods, what's the difference between the methodology and the method, the methodological approach, and the paradigm, choosing your paradigm, and your sample data collection method, as I said before, how are you going to analyze that data? And this sheet was the one that I really worked on to help me through that process. Of course, this one we're talking about the conceptual framework of the research, the epistemology and the ontology. And we're looking at the fundamental nature of the world and what it means to exist in that world, or the study of reality. Looking at all of that, the conceptual framework, the theories, the beliefs, epistemology and methodology, epistemology, ontology, and methodology, and the theoretical aspect, the conceptual quest. What is it? How you're going to prove that? How you're going to write that up? And the coherence. How do I ensure that there is coherence between my aims, theoretical assumptions, ontology, epistemology, perspectives, methodology, methods, data collections, right through to my conclusion? How do I ensure coherence between or among all of these? So to help me with that, this is the research that I had to do, and to look through and to really read extensively. And you can see the pages highlighted in this page, which guided me and continued to help me through that bit. There are many more, but I just share one more because it's just so much. And this one was to do with the research title. How do you actually choose a title for your research and your aims and your research questions? Gotta be specific, because you can fail a viva just by having one word wrong in your research question or in your aims or in the title of your research. Must be headline selling feature. It should be clear, accurate, precise, and serious and straightforward. And it's just an amazing journey. It's choosing your topic, what to research, the role of the self. I talked about insider, outsider research. The role of the self in choosing your topic. What's your contribution to knowledge? Development of good practice. Dissemination and impact of your findings. Originality, timeliness, and relevance of your study. Is it feasible? Is it worthwhile? How is your work significant? What's the purpose of it? Why are you doing it? The context, the backgrounds, the aims. What is it all about? Where will your research go? What's the purpose of your research? How can you criticize or evaluate theory or beliefs? Forecast some outcome, develop good practice, or to empower social group. What is the aim of your research? Your goals and research paradigm, and all of this. Qualitative or quantitative research design. I mean, it's just on and on, relating choice of methodology to the aims of your research. So when you really put it all together, it is a tremendous process. So this just gives you just a little flavor of the preparation, the preparatory work that I literally had to put in before I could actually start to even contemplate writing the research. Now, of course, when I had done all the interviews, and it was really challenging. So for me, my interviews were between an hour and a half to 2 hours long. And that meant recording them with permission, of course, all the ethical things you have to write about, recording them, and then I had to transcribe them. And to transcribe one of my research of the 13-15 I'd done, including the 2 pilots, you have to do the pilot study to test and to evaluate the pilot and to see what you need to change, whether the questions were too long, were they ambiguous, all of that you're doing the pilot study before you do the proper research and the proper questionnaires. So once all of that has been gone through, the ethics committee has approved it, which can be challenging again, because for me, getting ethical approval from the university was a challenge, because I was working with teachers who were sharing their personal stories in the life history research. It's a narrative research, and therefore it was very personal. They were discussing various aspects of their lives which could trigger and evoke sad memories. For example, divorce and death and all manner of things that have happened in their lives as they look at the history. And so for me, the ethical thing was challenging, and I had to really come good in order to convince the ethics committee that I could manage the potential issues and problems that could emanate from doing this research, all the issues that could come up to cause harm, professional harm, because teachers were telling me about their personal practice on matters of conscience and how they dealt with and had to deal with their personal consciences and their religious beliefs when they were teaching sensitive and controversial issues, whether they were matters of science through evolution, climate change, or sexuality, etc., etc. They were very delicate topics that they were teaching, and of course some of these conflict with their personal beliefs. What do you do? And these are some of the issues. Transcribing the questionnaires is a laborious process. It took me at least 12 hours to transcribe each interview. Okay, it's about 12 hours. If someone spoke for about 2 hours, it could be about 13 hours just to listen to that tape and to type it up, putting in every every comma, every and every single punctuation. And then when you end up with about 160,000 words in your transcription, and then to go through that now and to analyze and to decide what is the information that you're going to use that's relevant, and how do you decide what is relevant and what you're not going to use, and what are the ethical implications of what is not used, to say that you have not wasted the time of your participant. It's very challenging, and you have to justify every aspect, every decision you make. You have to be able to justify the same. So far I've mentioned the actual viva. And if I can just show you now the actual finished product, and then I'll just quickly mention the the graduation and the celebration. Maybe I do those in another video because I really want to read some bits of the actual viva for you. But here is the finished product, the thesis, and I give thanks for it. It's really, it's a big read, and this actually included the 5 years worth of work. The thesis, of course, but also all the work that I've put in, the different modules. And for this doctoral degree, we had 8 modules to do. The 7th module was writing a book, where all of us in the class wrote chapters in that book, Being Christian in Education, which I submitted chapter 5 in that book. So that is it for that one. I did mention the book I wrote here for the celebration, and the dedication of the thesis, research aims, research abstract, research questions, significance of the research, which I went in, some research findings, and the conclusion to my research I did put there. And then of course I talk a little bit about my bachelor's and master's journey, the doctoral journey itself, and I'll go through that another day. I talked about the first and final reviews, and here we are, the challenges that we went through, the hard nights of study, and the time leading up to the final review process, and the timetable I made to structure my studies. Here I'm at the library, printing off the copies for the printers to bind it. What a day it was. So, what can I say? If I can just read this quickly as I wrap this up. All right. Let me just talk about the journey. Defense Viva preparation, mock and final Viva, the journey. With all deadlines met, my thesis was submitted on the 18th of December 2017. Wow, what a relief! It was now out of my hands, but a new stress emerged. I cannot do anything at this point but wait and prepare for the mock and the real Viva. So I had a mock Viva just to prepare me. I read the thesis over and over, annotating and highlighting key points and finding my key points, findings and conclusion, making sure I know my original contribution to knowledge. Reading examiners' writings, watching examples of defenses on YouTube, reading doctoral textbooks were the order of the day to prepare. Down with the flu, I had the mock Viva in January 2018. It was a very useful experience. In addition to all I did, I wrote out about 40 possible Viva questions from a doctoral textbook I could be asked, then went painstakingly through my thesis to write out possible answers to these questions. For example, I tried to know exactly where in the thesis to find any reference to defend and support any question that might be asked. I followed these revision principles for the real Viva. I got very good and constructive feedback from the mock Viva process and simply continued to revise and practice for my Viva, now set for March 16, 2018, which I told absolutely no one about. I tell you what, I just want to concentrate. I want to focus and just keep my mind clear, and I didn't want anybody to, put any seed of doubt in my mind. I had faith, I believe, and I want to just keep it that way. That was not the full story anyway, but that was quite important. And the professor, after a long process, wrote, I found this a well-written, thoughtful, and original thesis on a topic of some significance to the teaching profession and beyond. Great care has been taken in writing the thesis. There is a great deal of valuable material throughout the thesis. I look forward to discussing it. So that was the comment from the external supervisor. Let me just read quickly what they said here. My two supervisors also showed up later at the viva. My defense was scheduled to start at 1 p.m. I was by this time very hungry. I had forgotten to bring even water, let alone food. About half hour before the start, I went in, spoke with my supervisors, who spoke casually, not about the exam or my thesis, maybe not to startle me, or they were confident in my ability, whatever. No one can guarantee the outcome of any viva. When invited into the room, I politely greeted my examiners, both the external examiner and the internal examiner, and the panel chair. I was offered a seat, water, juice, and sandwich. I think I had juice or water, although I was hungry. I did not eat anything. My external examiner did look stern, although the atmosphere was not intimidating, yet I knew I had to take it seriously. He did not begin with the expected "tell me about your research" or "why did you choose the topic," to gentle break the ice and to ease me in. He said he read it and thanked me for providing an interesting study, and that he had some questions for me, chapter by chapter. I knew it was going to be a long day because there were 7 chapters. He spent over half an hour on chapter 1 asking about my research questions and my definition of the term Christian. I took notes and politely answered and defended as best as I could. Where I did not seem to get through to convince him on a point, I stopped talking. At times, he and my internal examiner seemed to disagree, and I wisely held my peace and allowed them to battle out their differences. My first supervisor, who was allowed in the room, was there as a silent observer, and he took notes from behind. He sat behind me. He was not allowed to communicate with me at all. He was not allowed any eye contact with me, and my second supervisor who came was not allowed in the room, but thankfully she waited outside the full duration of the defense. The interrogation was very intense, and I had to be thorough, robust, and rigorous in my defense. This was a rough fight. After 5 years and all that money of my own pocket, I could not afford to fail. After more than 2 hours of grilling, the chairperson, in his role to ensure that the viva university protocols were followed, stopped the process and asked if I needed a break. I said no, but he insisted. My supervisor and I went out for 15 minutes, then returned. The intense interrogation continued. After defending, justifying my use of the life history method, to clarifying my use of the term Christian evangelism, justifying my data analysis and how I arrived at my conclusion, etc., the interrogations continued. In my preparation months before, I had analyzed the data meticulously using the papers which I showed you. And I have to prove that there was no plagiarism, and I had to go chapter by chapter in how I designed all of it. My first supervisor had said previously, before submitting it, that the chapters contain significant signs that could be potentially very strong thesis, and we were delighted to see how much my thinking and my work have developed, and the interviews produce very interesting and important data of a kind that addresses the purpose of Christianity and education, of the Christianity and education doctoral cohort. And one thing I forgot to mention was that the doctoral process, or the doctoral degree, was actually designed to commemorate the 50th anniversary of the university, Christ Church University in Canterbury, and hence the Jubilee cohort. That was it. What did the professor say at my final review? Phillip is to be congratulated on producing a substantial draft of his thesis. He has worked incredibly hard on his empirical research. His engagement with the literature and his writing style has made massive improvements since the last review. Particularly impressive is his data collection, which he has undertaken with the teachers. His analysis of that lays bare the challenges that they experience in seeking to integrate the personal Christian convictions with the requirements of teaching PSHE. The potential contribution of the thesis lies in the discussion of the strategies that the teachers adopted. Potentially, this could be a significant contribution to an important topic. And it continues that Phillip's thesis epitomizes the sort of work we had hoped would emerge from the Jubilee cohort. And I think that was absolutely fantastic, and I thank the rest. Now, after I presented my defense, and I did read these to the panel, of course, they thanked me and asked me to leave the room for their deliberation. My first supervisor came with me, sat outside on the bench, and we waited outside in the gentle breeze. We had light conversation. It was make or break. As we waited, the invitation to re-enter the room by the panel chair. After 20 minutes deliberation, the verdict was reached, and we were invited back by the viva chairperson. As I nervously entered, external examiner said, "Of course, we would love for you to have a doctorate." And of course, he went on to tell me what were some of the issues that I need to correct, and those he gave me, and it was an amazing journey. My professor, panel chair, wrote, "Phillip's extensive empirical study was a mammoth undertaking and was conducted with rigor and resilience. Phillip's external examiner was one of the leading professors in the area, and the final award of the degree of doctorate was earned under rigorous interrogation." And that's from my panel chair. And later on, he had to write these words, and he said, "Phillip's external examiner was one of the leading professors in the area, as mentioned a while ago, and the final award of the doctoral degree was earned under rigorous interrogation. It is a tribute to Phillip," he continued, "that he succeeded at the highest level of academia while holding down a full-time teaching post. There are few people who manage to do that." End of quote. And I'm very grateful for the journey, and as you share that with me, and as mentioned, I will come back to you another time and talk about the graduation, and also the graduation, but also the celebration, and and how you can plan for your thesis. I'm going to come back to you. And for those of you doing your doctorate, doing your doctoral study, doing a PhD, I want to be there for you, to encourage you and to help you as you go through your process with study skills, time management, stress management, and just how to cope as you go through this rigorous time in your life. Once again, I thank you very much for the time you have spent with me as I reflect on the 5th anniversary of my completing my doctorate, and my aunt who made that for me in Atlanta, knitted it and sent it all the way from the USA. Thank you very much, Aunt Frida. And for Rona, my wife, thanks for your support. My family, my friends, my tutors, my examiners, and for everyone who has been there for me. I'm eternally grateful, and I'm thankful for everyone who has supported me on this journey and continue to do so with me. I'd just like to put in a plug, of course, for my new book, Safely Through Unbroken Pieces, and this is available on Amazon, so you may want to have a look at that as well. And I've mentioned quite a bit in the book as well, as we look at the subtitle, Focus on What You Have Left, Not on What You Have Lost. Thank you so kindly. My name is Phillip O'Connor. Thanks for joining me on this journey. Look forward to talking to you soon. Take care now. Bye-bye.